So moving along with this February 2021 meeting of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild, um, I want to talk about some of the key events that the Guild typically is involved with. Of course, because of the pandemic, we haven't been active in those areas for almost a year now, but we are still working on them. The tool swap and expo is still being planned. It is set for September 18th, 2021. The committee met in January and they agreed to go ahead with planning, but they are proceeding cautiously. Clearly, we want to make sure that enough of the population is able to become vaccinated by September, that we can hold a safe event for everyone, our members and participants included. So that's what's going on with the tool swap. I've received a couple of questions in this last month about the Northern Woods exhibition. The Northern Woods Committee also met in January, and we immediately, without any dissent, decided that holding, Blake, could you please go on mute? Thank you. We immediately decided that scheduling an event for April was just too soon. We felt that there would not be enough people vaccinated to make the event safe. So what we decided to do was to schedule it for October. So we have secured a contract to hold the Northern Woods exhibition once again at Eden Prairie Center, the dates of October 7 through October 10. But just like the tool swap, the committee will be meeting in late spring to decide whether or not we can proceed with that and maintain safety for everyone involved. Another one of our big events is the fall seminar, which of course we had to cancel for last year. We are once again ramping up the planning for that activity. We are planning to hold it in November. The date has not been yet set because we haven't got final word from our intended presenter what date would work for them. So as soon as we get the details on that, we'll pass that along to you. Let's see, what else? Well, I also already mentioned that we are recording these meetings every month, and it will be up on YouTube. You can just visit our YouTube channel in a couple days, hopefully by the end of the week, and you should be able to find that. People keep joining us here. We're up to 84 members. It's been nice to see how well attended these virtual meetings have been. It has been a boon for many people who live too far outside the Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area to attend our monthly meetings on a regular basis in person. So we are getting a lot of folks. Last month, actually, we got somebody from Texas, and that was a real surprise for me. So anyway, we're up to 83 participants so far. I got a question about the summer picnic. There are no plans at this time for a summer picnic. It is just way too early to make any kinds of plans at all. But we will keep that in mind. And if things look favorable come, April, we can go ahead and schedule a picnic. What else? Oh, our door prizes, which of course we aren't giving out in person anymore, but we are issuing each month gift cards for either Rockler or Woodcraft. This in the month of January, we sent out $25 gift cards to from Rockler to 9 people. Now, usually we send out 10. But I did not get any response yet from the 10th person. So I'm waiting to hear back from them whether or not they are still around and still have a valid mailing address. So the people who did get Rockler gift cards are Thomas Peden, John Magnuson, Richard Wildberger, Jay Ankeny, Jana Frank, Robert Reed, Justin Kindlespire, David Duddleston, and Janet Totter. So congratulations to all of you. Hope you spent your gift cards wisely at Rockler or will. Okay, so how are we doing here? At 6:59. I have not received any requests from anyone for a what's on your bench submission. I did get a notice from somebody who is bragging, I guess, that they're warm down in Florida. So good for you, Bob. Now, a lot of our folks, I know one of the pro woodworkers I follow on Instagram lives in Austin, Texas. And this week he posted a short video of him giving his daughter a ride in the snow. Being in Texas, they don't have any sleds. He was using the family's kayak. It was really funny. But bad news for those folks down there. Actually, I noticed today it was warmer in Minneapolis than Oklahoma City. Well, anyway, let's get on to our presentation here. Dan Burks, are you available to introduce our presenter?
Yes, I am actually at home. I'm not at his office or his shop, but Kevin Southwick is a well-known furniture conservator in the Minneapolis area. He has given many presentations and often gives classes through woodcraft. He's 25 years of experience. He's worked closely with people who have shown at the, of course, it's just in Washington, D.C., the one of the museums there, which is, of course, blanking out on. That's all I have to say, really. I'm happy that he agreed to do this. He's going to have give a very nice presentation on coloring woods and preventing blotching on different woods and techniques for doing that. So I don't see him on the screen, but he must be here someplace.
Yeah, yes, he is with us. Kevin, go ahead and take it away on your end.
Hi. Well, good evening to everyone out there. I'm sure that a lot of the guild members might recognize me from one retail store or another, having done that stuff, and or past presentation I did for the guild on using epoxy putty for repairs. And so I'm excited to jump into this thing tonight here and talk about coloring wood a little bit, at least a good introduction to it, and talking about how to stay out of trouble, and the main topic of how to reduce the potential for blotching on different woods with stains. So I personally, when I'm building something for myself, I usually pick a wood that's the right color, and then I don't have to stain it. So I don't have to deal with this stuff. But in my work, I always have to match colors and make something look like something, and frequently there's a need for stain that's appropriate, and so you have to take the risk. It's always a little bit of a gamble when you're putting stain on the wood. The best way to reduce that gamble is to do testing, like in every other step of woodworking that every woodworker knows. Is, you know, you check your saw for a square, and then you cut a board and you make sure that that's square, and you have a really good plan and a thought out cut list and everything. And it's like that with finishing. If you set up all the right steps ahead of time and test things nicely, it increases your chances of success. This is especially important when you're staining. So clear finish is always a lot easier, not as big a concern. Bunch of good ways to do it with stains. You got to know how to stay out of trouble. So one of the things that we're going to look at tonight is how to reduce the propensity for blotching. And on this piece of wood, on the bench here, it says cherry veneered plywood. Cherry is a well-known wood, or cherry is well known for being a little bit blotchy, if not a lot blotchy. And the way that this grain pattern is going through here, I would predict that it's going to have the typical blotching that cherry does. So I want to show you a way to reduce that. And it has a lot to do with gel stains. Not that gel stains are the only stains to use for this type of thing, but in the end, the clear gel finish is the thing that really helps to reduce the blotching. And it says on the can here, gel top coat. It doesn't say blotch reducer or stain controller, pre-stain sealer, wood conditioner, any of those other terms that come up to reference a magical material in a can to reduce blotching. And all of them are finishes, clear materials that plug up the wood, some to 1 degree or another. And it happens that the thickness of the gel stain is especially good at reducing blotching because it
Jay, we've lost your audio and the video is pretty jerky.
and hoping to show that the gel stain is a thick material, almost as thick as like a Vaseline or something. The clear gel finish.
Put that down on
And
the,
that's a wonderful material.
Ed, can you hear me?
Yeah, gotcha.
And all of the gel stains that are on the shelf next to the clear gel finish are made just by adding color to the clear gel. And so when you put on a thick gel stain, you're also getting a coat of finish at the same time, just sometimes an advantage. And a little bit of an advantage in reducing blotching, but the real key is using the clear gel before you put on the stain to reduce the blotching. So I'm going to show this on this cherry board in front of me here. And what we're going to do is seal half of this surface with the clear gel top coat. And what we hope that will do for us is mediate the variances in absorbency of the surface of the wood so this stain soaks in more evenly. And because we put a clear stuff on the wood first, it's obviously going to soak in a little bit less and result in a little bit lighter color. And that's always an automatic trade-off with using a stain controller, a blotch reducer. Oh, I see my my gel stain has kind of crusted over on the top here. Well, it's not too late. I don't have to throw it away. I think there's some good stuff at the bottom And I really don't care about these chunks that are in here. I'm just gonna use this as is, because in the process of wiping it on and rubbing it off, those chunks don't matter. So I have a rag full of the gel stain here and the chunks. We'll smear it on both sides. The one that is pre-sealed with the clear gel top coat or stain controller blotch reducer. And then as we wipe it off, we'll see if that made any difference in the appearance and if we like that difference or not. I have heard from a lot of people that they don't want to reduce the blotchiness of the cherry because that reduces the character of the grain. So it is a matter of personal opinion, and that's just fine. But I'll show you what the difference looks like here. And this pizza cherry was pretty typical. They wanted to get fairly blotchy. And I don't know if the camera is picking up as much as I can see about the lighter color on this side and the reduction in the blotching. But to me, that's pretty noticeable from here. I also have a sample here made with some fur that shows a different type of blotching. The cherry blotching is spots here and there, almost kind of randomly. This looks like a lot smoother color over here. On the fur, the blotching happens in a very linear pattern, and especially in the pith or the center of the tree that you can see there. And so that's a different type of blotching. And if I was doing my old cabin in northern Minnesota, I would probably prefer this look. If I was doing a nice piece of furniture, I might prefer that look. So it's not a better or worse, just a different visual impact. Here's a piece of cherry that has been taken through a complete finishing process. So this side here was not sealed. This side here was sealed. And are we able to pick that up on the camera?
It's getting close.
Yeah. So it might be a little hard to see on that smaller sample, but there's an overall blotching pattern here that is less over here. And this looks more like naturally aged cherry to me. This looks like nicely stained cherry to me. So it's a matter of what color or what appearance you want overall.
Squeezing lines.
Yes.
On the fur again, here's a piece that is sealed ahead of time with the clear gel. This one was not, and the stain was applied the same to both. And you can see that this color is more even all the way across, and there are larger variations in the color as it goes across here, and the stain soaks in a lot more wildly in the very absorbent parts of the wood. And so it's not a matter of right or wrong, it's a matter of different effects that you can get when you're staining wood And then there's some other neat stuff that gel stains can do for you. And I'd like to just point out that in my cabinet of stains that I have back here, this one has a full shelf of gel stains of different colors in here, and a full shelf of dyes, some pre-mixed and some in concentrated form, because those are the two materials that I use. And I don't have any thin liquid stains in there. If for some reason I need a thin liquid stain, which is often useful, I would typically take a gel stain and thin it out with some paint thinner, so that when I have a cabinet full of gel stains, I also have a cabinet full of thin liquid stains if I want to just add some paint thinner. And if I want to change the color of a gel stain, there's a neat trick to alter the color of a gel stain. And let's say that this one that I'm using here is not quite red enough for me.
Hold it up, Kev.
I can take a little bit of red artist oil paint. Well, I probably got it at Dick Blick or some art supply store. Because the gel stain is oil based, and it's made from the clear gel plus pigment, which is exactly what this is. And this is an oil-based pigment. So all of the gel stain colors are made in the same way. You take the clear stuff, you add some color, you stir it up, you got gel stain. So what I'm going to do here is just demonstrate altering a gel stain by adding a little bit of red color and some paint thinner to loosen it up a little bit to help me mix it in. It's like cooking. I just need it a little bit spicier here, a little bit redder. And then I have that same color of gel stain turned redder. And I'd like to look at the next demonstration here. So we'll put this one aside. So here it is. And what I've done here on the reverse side of the piece of cherry is I've stained it once with the combination of clear gel to reduce blotching and the nice brown color that I chose of gel stain. And I did that one 2 days ago. And then yesterday, I decided that wasn't dark enough. And I put on another application of the gel stain. And it got that much darker the second day. With thin liquid stains, this is not a realistic possibility. You know, you can do a little bit of that with thin liquid stains, but not very much. With gel stains, you can actually do quite a bit of that. So what I'd like to show is I'll take this this mixture. Well, let's add a little bit more brown stuff to it here. A little bit too red yet. But I'm going to add a third application of color here and show that you can sneak up on a color with gel stains in a way that you just can't do with thin liquid stains. By the way, General Finishes is not paying me any advertising for this commentary tonight. But I'm using General Finishes stains. Because they make a nice gel stain. So the first day of staining with the blotch reducer, second day of staining, don't need the blotch reducer at that point, that's already been taken care of. And for matching purposes or for some reason, I've decided that I need that darker and I need it quite a bit redder. So I've mixed up this red boosted gel stain of the same sort that I started the process with. And we'll see if I can make that look redder. So this does get a little bit into the area of color matching if you're inclined to be doing any of that. But it also gets into just being able to be fussy about dialing in the color that you're going to get. And it's with all the appropriate testing ahead of time that you might do, it's often not 100% predictable. And so you might want to adjust it a little bit in the end. And with gel stains, that's actually possible. You're not just stuck with what you got the first time. As long as there's nothing horrendous or too dark or blotchy or unsightly about the first round, you could always do another one and add more color. Definitely true that staining is an additive process. You don't get to make it lighter with stain. You're going to add color and make it a little darker in some way or another. And making sure that I got it wiped off thoroughly so I don't get streaks here. And then let's see how much of a change that I made. Was I able to get it a little bit redder and a little bit darker? Looks like I did. Maybe not quite as red as I wanted. I could do it again tomorrow if I want to. It's interesting to note that because the stains are made from the clear finish and 3 rub-on wipe-off coats of this material is a very nice wipe-on rub-off finish. Perfectly adequate for anything that doesn't need to be waterproof. I have now here 3 coats of finish as well as 3 applications of stain. So it's very possible I would call that finish done at that point. It's true that with each application of the color I'm putting on the clear. And so tomorrow, if I didn't need it to be waterproof, that would be a perfectly adequate finish. All right, so we're going to move on to another demonstration here. I'll move this one out of the way.
Kevin, while you're getting that one set up, we have a question.
Yes, sir. What's the question?
This is from Mike Nesnadal. Have you tried the Charles Neal approach? How does it compare?
I would want to know is that the Charles Neal sealer stuff? Charles Neal has advertised a water-based pre-stain sealer. which is like every other pre-stain sealer. It's water-based instead of oil-based. And it's thinned out water-based finish. And it works better than nothing for a stain controller. And when I'm using a stain controller blotch reducer material, which all of them are clear finishes that are either thinned out or thickened or some other form of clear finish, when I'm choosing a stain controller blotch reducer, I know that this one works really well because I've tested it extensively. There's an article that I did that's about blotch reducing for American Woodworker, and maybe Jay will help me grab that here, and I'll give you a quick look at it. It's something that I want to send a digital copy to the guild and let them use that for members. And this is an article I did for American Woodworker amongst a whole bunch of them that I did for American Woodworker. And believe it or not, there's like 6 out of the 23 that are worth looking at. This is one of them. And it talks about this exact concept that we're working with here of how to control the absorbency and the variance of absorbency of wood in a way that is more predictable than the bare surface of wood itself. So we are going to supply for the guild a digital copy of this article. The most interesting part being this image of a surface of wood filled with clear material, more where it's porous, less where it's not porous. I'm not sure you can see all that here, but you will when we send you a copy of it. But wood conditioner, pre-stain sealer, all that stuff sounds kind of magical. It's really just all clear finish of one type or another. The reason I don't want a water-based pre-stain sealer is it dries really, really fast, and I have a hard time wiping it off evenly. If I can't wipe it off evenly, I'll create more blotching than I'm reducing, because yeah, that can get to be a mess pretty quick. If you're doing something small and it doesn't take much time, a water-based pre-stain makes sense. You have to be able to do it quick though. So let's look at this first sample here and the clear finish gel controlling the stain on the fur. This fur that's a completely different type of blotching than cherry. It also sometimes does that random area blotching, but it's much more of a linear type of blotching. And when using this to pre-stain fur, I like to apply a generous amount and work it in a little bit, because that wood is really, really porous. And the idea is to get the porous areas to get soaked up with clear. So when the color comes along, those porous areas don't get filled up with color. They're already filled up with clear. So let's use this color here. This just happens to be Candlelight gel stained by General Finishes. It's a lighter medium kind of brown. bit on the amber side. All of the samples that I'm showing you here tonight have been sanded for finishing all the way up to 120, which if you read the can of finish, you might be surprised by, but it generally works out really, really well. You can sand higher grit, and there's no negative consequence to that. But in my world, if I can stop at a lower grit, I would rather do that than go to the higher grit. So even this really relatively light color, you can see did some serious blotching, both in a linear pattern and a kind of random blotching pattern, both of which are reduced on this side. Whether that's the goal, if that's what you're looking for or not, that's debatable. But the point is, it's an option. When stains get out of control like this, that color soaks in really deep, and it's really hard to reverse. There's not much you can do about it. With gel stains, though, one of the options you can have is with a little bit of paint thinner, and especially if you do the pre-stain sealer ahead of time, you can undo an unwanted color quite a bit. Not so much over here where the color was the first thing to hit the wood and soak in deeply, but over here you can lighten it quite a bit. So that makes it possible to back up a little bit and have an eraser. I don't have a clock. Tell me the time, please.
It's 7:31, Kevin.
All right, good. All right, so I don't mean to be just touting the virtues of gel stains. They're very useful, and they're one of the main supplies in my cabinet for all of the finishing color problems that I have. But I also use dyes, of course, and they're really neat. Probably a good time to mention that I teach 4 different classes at the Woodcraft store that are different topics. The first one is clear finishes, because that's really important. And that's a lot easier to really get a solid handle on in one day. And then the second class is about coloring wood. And so if day 1 is about how to stay out of trouble and make everything work out, day 2 of coloring wood is about, oh, I see you're interested in venturing out into the weeds a bit. Let's make that a little safer. Day 3, oddly enough, is an all-day class on shellac. And that was one of the first classes I ever did, and I'm always surprised that it's one of the most successful, frequently desired classes that I do, because shellac has such an important part in woodworking for hundreds of years, if not more. So that's a fun day. You never get a room full of normal people together to talk about shellac all day. Then the last class is about furniture restoration and refinishing. And that, that's an entirely different topic that involves construction and joinery and glues and all different kinds of things. And that's what I mostly do in my shop here in South Minneapolis is I'm repairing antique furniture. And so I enjoy that class a lot. For the folks that are serious about the antique furniture class, a lot of them want to take all of the other classes before they get to that one, because they then come in at a different elevation than the person that's just taking the furniture restoration class. None of these classes have prerequisites or requirements from any of the others. But if one would want to know about furniture restoration, all of these other things can be really important and beneficial. And so that's why the classes are done in that order. Obviously, classes have been a little curtailed lately. I haven't done a class in how long? I can't even remember right now. But it was more than a year ago, I think. And so we'll get back to that. But those 4 classes are the usual routine that I do. I'm also setting up in my new shop space here the ability to do small classes here on site. And one of the things that has become really useful for a lot of people, in addition to my being available at Woodcraft on Saturdays, which I would want everybody to know about. If you've got a project you're working on, I am there from 9 to 4:30 or so on Saturday, and always willing to help everybody, especially guild members, with whatever they've got going on. You bring me samples of stuff, I might be able to help you solve a problem. I also offer to everybody that's attending this meeting to send me an email with a question that follows up on what we're talking about tonight, or maybe something completely different. And I'll try to help with that. It's a little hard to help with finishing problems that are complex on the phone, but I'm getting better at it. And then the one thing that's been working really well lately that I hope to offer more frequently is consultations with individuals that have specific situations in front of them that they need some help with. And so that's my pitch, I guess, is telling you how I'm doing the educating stuff and what might be available. So moving on from there, just
That's a good segue, Kevin. I've got a few more questions, or actually a similar question from 2 different gentlemen, one from Robert Sorensen and one from Bill Lammers. If you're doing a dining table, what would you apply to make the table water resistant?
yes, well, this, very important. And in the modern world, we've been spoiled by the fact that we can have like 100% waterproof, heat resistant finishes. And almost all of them, the ones that I trust personally, are oil-based varnishes. The word varnish is a little bit of a mysterious term, but varnish covers anything that builds a film on top of the wood. And that's the easiest way to understand the term varnish. So polyurethane is a varnish, and alkyd resin varnish, and shellac is a varnish, and not to worry. You want a waterproof one, I'm going to pick a good quality oil-based polyurethane, and that really covers most of it. General Finishes makes a nice one. I think that the Varathane brand is a little more preferable than Minwax, but Minwax polyurethane is pretty good too. It doesn't take that much to get a good oil-based polyurethane. Water-based finishes, on the other hand, not quite as durable, but quite tough. They're not as chemically resistant. And I found that out when I was using alcohol swabs, and I sat one down on my water-based finish tabletop. It etched the finish within a minute. And so the water-based ones aren't quite as tough against that. So I would use an oil-based poly. The next question.
That was it.
Oh, that was
Same, two dudes, same
Both
question.
the same. All right. So moving on to the list of things that are useful to know about gel stains.
Let me interrupt. There was one question I thought appropriate. Someone has observed that you're taking oil-based finishes and using paper towels, and he would like to know how you dispose of the paper towels with the oil finish on them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the importance of not starting yourself on fire or burning up your shop. Any towel that has an oil-based anything on it, I have a variety of places to safely dry them. I'm not sure if you can see this one right here by my bench fan, but if you wad up oily rags and throw them in the garbage and put some other rags or sawdust on top of them, you're setting up a very dangerous situation. Everybody knows that oily rags are dangerous. What is most important to understand is that it doesn't take a spark or a flame to start oily rags on fire. They can sometimes start on fire on their own, spontaneously combust. It's especially true with linseed oil products. The gel stains, probably not as much, but anything on a rag that's oil-based, I always dispose of it in the same way, which is to hang it over a railing or clip it to the side of a garbage can and make sure that it dries hard and crispy. And then it's safe to throw in the garbage because the reaction that can start the fire has passed and there's no danger at all anymore. So I'm glad that question came up. It's one that I try to talk about in every presentation that I do, because in average class of 6 or 8 people that I do, there's 1 or 2 people in that class that can tell a story about what they know that happened to them or their neighbor when oily rags were not understood clearly. Mm. So yeah, for everybody out there, especially boiled linseed oil rags or any stains that might contain boiled linseed oil, definitely please hang them to dry. Put them in a can of water, they come out still oily. So you need to hang them to dry when you pull them out of the can of water. So that's a temporary move. Put them in a fireproof can. Yep, you can do that. If you're planning on containing the fire in the can, that's a way to go. I'm planning on not having a fire. And so I always use the hang it to dry safely approach, and the risk is gone. So thank you, Ed, for that question. That's an important one.
Yeah, I got another question here, Kevin. There seems to be a little confusion as to how long to wait between application of the gel coat and your top coat of stain.
Yeah, right. And part of that might come from the fact that most pre-stain products come with directions on the label that are very strange, and they say wait at least 20 minutes, but not more than 2 hours. And there's that strange window of time that they're thinking that that's the optimal time to use to apply the stain after applying their stain controller product. The way that I use the clear gel top coat as a stain controller is just as you saw it. You apply it, work it in a little bit, wipe it off, and immediately apply the stain. And I didn't mention that that stain can be an oil-based gel stain, or it can be a thin liquid stain, oil-based. And it works the same way. You put the clear gel on. The reason that the clear gel works differently and better than other stain controllers is because of its thickness. It goes into the porous areas of the wood and it's like thick in there. It's not all thin and watery like a thinned out finish, Charles Neal style, or otherwise very thin general finishes, thin oil-based pre-sealer is the same. They're all just a little bit of finish and a whole bunch of paint thinner, or a little bit of finish and a whole bunch of water in the water-based versions. And that's fine, but it doesn't work very well. There are things that work better. And because in writing this particular article that I'll be sharing with the guild on how to control blotching, I was officially assigned to go out and buy every stain controller on the market and test them out. And it did. This works better than anything else. And that's my opinion. I'm also pretty sure it's a fact.
Does that include working better than shellac?
Yeah. Well, shellac dries really fast. Anything clear will work as a stain controller. Anything clear will work as a stain controller. All clear materials do the same thing. They soak into the absorbent parts of the wood more than the non-absorbent parts of the wood. So the thing to get in your head about blotch reducing stain controlling is it's all just clear stuff. Can I smear it in and plug up the wood evenly, quickly, or within the allowed amount of time? Now with shellac, if you can brush on shellac across a board 100% perfectly evenly, you can have a predictable stain controller. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you can imagine if you brushed on more shellac in one area than another area, you would create variances in absorbency, not reduce them. So I choose easy to use, plenty of time to smear around, stain controller that's thick and plugs up the wood good. And that's the one that has always worked best for me. There's one other way to use it that's described in more detail in this article. And we don't really have much time to talk about that tonight, but I'll mention it, which is if you wanted to use a water-based stain with this better than other stain controller, there is a way to do that. You can't really mix oil and water, of course. But if you put the oil-based gel stain on the night before, after thinning it out properly, and you let it dry completely, then it's not an oil versus water thing. It's just a nicely sealed up surface that's ready to soak up the dye and water or whatever water-based stain that you're using. So that's a secondary method that's in here. And really beyond the time that we have tonight to explain it. But there's good directions in the article and everybody will have access to it.
Got another question. Somebody noticed that on your website, you refinish exterior doors. And what's your recommendation for a good exterior grade finish?
Oh, yeah, good. I do quite a few front doors, averaging at least a couple a year, I think. And that's because front doors are important to people. They're like furniture. And so they want them to look extra pretty. The finish that I put on front doors is always in the category of a high quality marine spar varnish. And that's a category of finish that is different from all the stuff at Home Depot and all the stuff at the hardware store that, and most of the stuff at Woodcraft that says it's for outdoor finish, because most of them are not very good at doing that job. And when I'm doing something for a customer, I like it to last. If I'm going to do a front door for them, I'm going to use a really high quality marine spar varnish. And the brand that I choose typically is Epiphanes. And Epiphanes can only be found at marine supply stores. And I think Amazon can bring you some also. But Epiphanes were other equally high quality marine grade varnishes that are actually meant for your $3,000 Chris Craft boat in salt water and sun all day. Those varnishes are different than the ones at Menards. And so I choose the, it's gone up from the last time I bought it. I know last quart I bought was $50 or $60 of the good quality marine varnish. Well, I don't want to be doing this every other year. So give me a can of varnish that costs twice as much and saves me a lot of work. No problem there. I'll do that. So, yeah, and I'm willing to continue taking questions about any other topics that are on people's minds. Most of what I wanted to say about using gel stains has already been made clear. There is one demonstration I'd like to do with a glazing technique. And then maybe after that, we take some more questions and wrap it up. What time have we got here?
We're 10 to 8.
10 to 8. Okay, good. Let me show
Bill
this.
has no problem with time. Take whatever time you need, Kevin.
All right, here we go. So on this surface here, it's possible to see that it's not just flat. Like that other addition of color I did to a flat surface, that was really easy. All I had to do was wipe it off gently with the rag, nice and evenly, and everything worked out. On this one, I've got these grooves, and if you can imagine that I would try to be wiping out dark stain from those grooves, I wouldn't be able to get it out of the grooves. I would be wiping it off the high spots long before I would get out of the grooves. So that makes it hard to add any color. And this surface here is 100% finished already. It's sealed up and has been for quite a long time. And glazing is a term that is used in finishing sometimes to describe applying color to an already sealed surface. You did see that a little bit on this sample because this sealed up the wood, this sealed it up more. By the time I got to this point, I was basically putting this gel stain on top of the wood, not soaking it into the wood. And on this door, what I'm going to pretend needs to be done is that it needs to be made darker and without a whole bunch of crap in the corners there. So the challenge is how to apply it, but more importantly, how to get it out of the corners. So I'm going to use some regular chip brushes or throwaway brushes. Buy a box of them for 20 bucks or whatever. This one has been cut off a bit to make it a little bit firmer. That's going to help me when I want to be scrubbing things out of corners and stuff. This one will make a good applicator. If you have ever seen General Finishes descriptions of how to change the color on your cabinet doors by using a foam brush to apply a gel stain, and they're basically using a light paint. It's not a real pretty look in the end. I'm not sure why they put out those strange videos, but I'll tell you, I don't recommend doing it that way. And I'll show you why, and you can see a little bit of this here. So I'll take some gel stain. With the purpose of changing this color. This already finished cabinet door with molding on it and grooves. Step one is easy enough. Smear it on, work it into all the grooves. And if you were to be watching a General Finishes website on this, they would be using a foam brush and just kind of troweling it on, which, again, I really don't understand. Now I've got a little less than 5 minutes probably to finish this task, because right now as I'm talking, this stuff is starting to dry. And when it dries, if I don't like it, I would have to use my paint thinner to wipe it off. I could do that, but let's use the 5 minutes that I have to take the streaks out and add just the amount of color that I can in one round. Without leaving streaks or rag marks. All right, so I've got a pretty good application on the Mako half and half here. And now I want to work that color down to where it doesn't have streaks, and I can get this crap out of the corners there. And the rag just doesn't quite do it. It leaves weird marks. So with a stiff brush, and this brush is called a Sash Brush. It's a kind of a specialized brush, not available at Home Depot probably, but you can see it's really sturdy and stout, and it's good for scrubbing, basically. I'm scrubbing into these grooves to get that stuff out of the grooves before it starts to dry. And I can also use it for distributing the finish on the flat surfaces, just like a rag. It works really well for that. And then this one is getting a little bit goopy, so just rub it off on this dry towel here. See if I can get a little bit more out. And then in many cases for glazing, I'll set down that brush, which is already a little dampened by the material, and get out a nice clean one. And finish the job. So this is a technique that is super useful when you're trying to avoid blotching. because you've got a sealed surface here, this added color cannot cause blotching. There's not random absorbencies in the wood. It's not going to happen. If I had put that color on this bare birch, you might be able to imagine what would happen. And if for some reason, as I'm making this adjustment to my old sealed surface, and I don't like what's happening, with paint thinner or mineral spirits, I can wash the majority of it right off because that was on a sealed surface. So the neat trick is it will stick to a sealed surface. You can stick it to glass and it'll stay there, and it will take a razor blade to remove it if you want to remove it. So it doesn't always leave the right sheen if you're making a color adjustment like this on cabinet doors. Sometimes you want to top coat it to get the proper sheen, but there's no reason to top coat it to protect it because it started out as clear finish. You put color in it, you nicely distributed it on the wood. If that looks good, you're fine right there. So the one thing that we haven't talked about at all is using dyes and how that's different. Oh, we're going to include this article as well for guild members. It talks about this process that we just did here, glazing, using a glazing stain or a gel stain, same terminology there. And so you'll get a copy of that available to you if you'd like it. And the other coloring material that has to be mentioned is dyes. And dyes can create really vibrant colors like this. They can also subtly age cherry or birch or other woods to look like a really mellow old wood instead of a brand new piece of cherry. And so they have a really wide range of abilities, and they're actually a little bit difficult to get control over. Once you've done that, oh my gosh, are they fantastic and super useful for coloring wood. And for anybody that does any wood coloring, I would strongly recommend you find some time maybe to play with some water-based dyes a little bit and see what that's about. We don't have the ability tonight to really dig into that topic in the second class of coloring wood. This subject takes probably 4 hours or so. So I want to introduce you to the idea and the value of the idea. Let you know that there's two things that you need to watch out about if you're using dyes. The first one is that there's most woodworkers or even average folk know how water soaks into wood. Like if you've got a cutting board, you're wiping down the cutting board, a little bit of water dampens it and darkens it. More water saturates it and darkens it even more. And then if you add a powerful coloring material like a dye to that, a little quick swipe of dye does one thing, and if you let it soak until the wood doesn't soak up anymore, it does another thing. And so there's value in understanding how wood soaks up water, because that's how it soaks up dye. If you're thinking of using dye and alcohol, that's fine, but it's almost never what I would choose to do, because water works way better for using dye wood loves to soak up water and suck up dye, and it does not do that for alcohol. So it behaves completely differently, and there's a whole bunch of different stuff to understand if you're using dye and alcohol on anything of any size, because the alcohol evaporates so fast, it's really hard to manage. But dye and water is worth working out how to use. Once you get past the surface saturation issues, that means like on hard maple, the first little dampening of water gets it damp. And 4 minutes later, it's soaked up as much water as it can, all the way across. And so when you're first applying the dye, it's like you can see every rag mark. And then you just keep going and waiting and watching the clock. And in 4 minutes, it all soaks up evenly and spreads out to an even color. And it's really weird if you've never seen it, and it causes a lot of people a lot of problems in using dyes. The second thing about using dyes that you've got to know right away, if you're going to get into it, is when the water evaporates and the dye dries, that they never look right at all. Sometimes they look really, really wrong. And especially when they're drying and one part starts evaporating a little quicker than another, then you get this really weird stuff going on, which leads a lot of people to making a decision to try to affect that somehow, which is absolutely the wrong decision. You just need to let it dry, let that strange appearance occur, and then when you put the finish on, you get the same look as when it was wet. So the wet look when you're applying a dye that's been saturated thoroughly is accurate. When it dries, it's not accurate. When you put the finish on, you'll get back the look that you saw when it was still wet. And so dyes inherently require more testing, at least until you get used to them. And then they get really cool and fun and easy to use. Because you can add dye to wood without sealing it up. That means you can add a little bit, and you haven't changed the absorbency of the wood. You can put as much color as you want into that wood. And then the next time you add a little bit more, or you change it a tiny bit. Tons of control available for fussy coloring with dyes. Also, in its simplest form, after you do the testing, it's so great on maple or woods like cherry that want to get blotchy. It's fantastic. Definitely worth learning about. Don't do it without trying it and getting used to it first. So I would like to let's wrap up the conversation on coloring wood with any other questions about that. And if folks have other questions about any part of finishing that I might be able to help with, glad to answer those now.
We've got a few from earlier, Kevin. This one from Jerry Smith. Suggestions for a protective coating, walnut kitchen countertop.
For walnut kitchen counter, I want about the same thing as I do for a tabletop, which on my own kitchen countertops is an oil-based polyurethane. A good marine spar varnish would also be a good choice, but for indoor stuff, an oil-based polyurethane for a countertop or a tabletop is really my preference. And it's just going to perform better and last longer.
He used water locks. Is there anything that he needs to be aware of going over the top of that?
Maybe. Water locks is a good material. If there was a problem that you experienced with it, it's pretty tough. If there was a problem and you were choosing to coat it with something else, I would be a little worried about that. Water locks is a tung oil and phenolic resin varnish. It's not a polyurethane. I think you could recoat it with polyurethane, but I'm not positive about that. Never run that test. Sorry, I don't know the answer to that one. I would use more water locks if I was planning on recoating it.
This one's from Bill Lammers. Kevin, can a clear gel finish be applied over armor seal to get a better buildup?
No. No. What's important to understand about the clear gel and the gel stains is that they only can possibly build the slightest little film. When you're brushing on a liquid varnish, you can brush on a healthy film, like the thickness of a piece of Reynolds wrap or something. When you're smearing on clear gel, it's as thin as a wax, because that's the application method. And so you can put this on thick with a trowel if you wanted to, but I'm not recommending it. Or a brush. It would just be a goopy mess. So the point is not the durability of the material so much as that it doesn't build a film above the wood. It's meant to work below the wood and seal up the wood from the underside. That's the most important part of finishing. Building a film on top of the wood is optional. Absolutely necessary if you're doing a countertop or a tabletop that needs to be waterproof. But if it was a chair or a piece of furniture that didn't matter to be waterproof, you could just use wipe on rub off finish like Sam Malouf, George Nakashima, Chippendale. There's like a lot of renowned furniture makers that have understood that sealing up wood up to here is the most important part of finishing. Putting a film on is optional, necessary if you want modern waterproof or heat resistant, and gel cannot do that for you.
This one from Chris Cairns. Can epiphanes, the spar varnish you referenced, be used after gel staining?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Gel stain is a pretty good coloring material for something that might be exposed to outdoor conditions. It's got more substance and resins, good durable stuff than most stains, and perfectly compatible with a marine spar varnish. Absolutely. That's often how I'm doing front doors, is with a gel stain to adjust the color, and then minimum of 4 coats of marine spar varnish.
And this is an earlier question from David Duddleston. Do you think gel coat with stain added is superior to shellac with stain added?
It's easier in application because it goes to the point where if I'm doing this on bare wood, the wood is nicely absorbent and the gel stain soaks in nicely and everything works out. Use a blotch reducer if I want to. Shellac with color in it is harder to apply evenly. Mostly because it dries so rapidly. So when I apply color to or apply shellac with color in it on antiques when I need to, as a last resort, because I don't have any other good options left. So putting color in shellac and painting it on, definitely possible. Very rational, just not very easy. So as a last resort only.
This one from Robert Sorensen. When do you use a varnish wax mixture?
Well, the varnish wax mixtures that I'm familiar with, or maybe oil and wax mixture. Whenever there's wax mixed into a finish, it's almost always an oil-based finish, usually based on linseed oil, boiled or free-range linseed oil from Sweden. But the oil and wax mixtures I love on picture frames, tool boxes, jewelry boxes, anything that just needs a simple wipe on rub off finish that is super nice feeling. Oil and wax finishes are my favorite for those types of items. Definitely not waterproof. Definitely not something I'm going to put on my floor or a tabletop. But oil and wax, wonderful material. Varnish and wax, I'm not sure what product that might be in particular, but it would fit in the same category because it's easy to understand that you can't put anything over wax. It won't stick. So once you put an oil and wax finish on, you're not going to top coat it with something else later. And that's one important thing to know. But yeah, for small tactile objects, I love oil and wax. If it's varnish and wax of some sort that I'm not clearly understanding, update the question. I'll do my best.
Here's a continuation from Mark Powell. Where is it appropriate to use just a wax as a final finish?
I would say in the same cases that I was talking about, oil and wax or wax, wonderful finish for things that don't need to be waterproof, and especially if you want them to feel nice. There's a special feel about wax that on a jewelry box or things like that. And wax also can be very non-toxic for food items like spoons or bowls or different things like that. But in the modern world, wax is not a common finish. It's even a wax. Most people don't even wax their cars these days. I mean, wax might protect the paint a little bit. It's the paint that protects the steel. And, do you need to wax it? You can if you want to. But wax on bare wood, that's what that oil and wax feel that I like. For picture frames, for jewelry boxes, a tool box would be very nice in oil and wax. Many of my benches are oil and wax because they're easy to maintain that way. And stuff doesn't stick to them easily. So I just do, on the bare wood, I just do an oil and wax finish. I know it's not as tough as polyurethane, but it's a lot easier to maintain for a workbench.
Kevin, a message came in directly to me. It asks, what are your thoughts on oil wax finishes from the floor industry, such as Odie's Oils?
Well, that's a good question. Oil and wax has been a traditional floor finish for hundreds of years. It fell out of favor when we had the option of making a waterproof, tougher finish on our floors that has wear resistance. And in Minnesota, it's easy to think of inside of your front door of your house, where people are going to come in with their boots on. Would I put an oil wax finish there? No, I definitely would not. Not of any sort. Odie's is a different kind of oil and wax. I'm learning about the Osmo fad, which is oil and wax. Rubio monocoat oil and wax. As far as I know, if you don't put a solid durable film on a floor and you just soak in oil and wax and leave next to nothing on top of the wood, then that wood's very susceptible to wear, salt, abrasion, anything and everything. So I'm not planning on putting an oil wax finish in my house.
Well, in the sense of using it on furniture, you're saying it would not be a durable finish, but it would feel nice.
Oh, for furniture, it's great. Yeah, for furniture, I'll just reference Sam Maloof once again for a moment. And in the 101 class that I do, that's about clear finishes, talk a lot about the sensibility of a Sam Maloof type finish that included oil and wax, and how seriously beautiful and high quality and durable that is for a chair, but not for a floor, not for my countertop, I don't need that job maintaining that. I got enough to do.
Speaking of maintenance, Robert Reed would like to know how you approach getting scratches off the kitchen floor or chair scuffs.
Sandpaper.
Well, if I knew the answer to that one easy, my wife wouldn't be quite as upset with me right now. Yeah, the best thing to do. Floor finishes come in a variety of different types of materials, and there are some of them that are labeled as floor finishes. And again, an oil base is going to be a little more durable than a water base in certain ways, but water-based floor finishes are really tough. One of the reasons that both oil-based and water-based floor finishes are really tough is because they contain aluminum oxide, which is the same thing that you use to make sandpaper. So what that means is there's tough grit in the film of finish. It's not necessarily the prettiest, clearest finish in the world, but it's a floor, and it's better if the floor can actually fight back against abrasions. And when it's got aluminum oxide in it, it'll wear down the sole of your shoe a little bit before it's going to wear down the finish. At least there'll be a good battle there. So floor finishes with aluminum oxide are the best, and if that's not good enough, I don't know of any answer to that question. There's a limitation to what finishes can do.
This question from Randall Warren. Any recommended books on furniture conservation or restoration?
No. Don Williams from the Smithsonian made a pretty good one, and it's called Saving Stuff. But it's not specific about furniture. It's pretty broad, but it's got really good information in it. Now, the information available on restoring furniture is reliable, useful, practical information on restoring furniture. Super hard to find. I would recommend maybe looking in and taking my classes at that point. Because seriously, there's so much bad information out there that the more that you look into it, the more confused you're likely to get. And that's such a horrible trap. Believe me, I know. I went through it for a long time. I've only been at this for like 25 plus years. And it took a long time to figure out why all that information I was getting was so wrong and so bad, and to figure out the truth of our practical and useful information that's true. And I wish I could give you a better answer to that question, but you read any and all of them understanding that they're biased, they're opinionated, and they're often not correct. And then you'll gain something from them, and read a lot of them.
Well, I hope I haven't missed any here, but that is all the questions that I've seen come through the chat.
That's all I've seen as well, Jay.
Well,
Oh, no,
good.
there was one. Somebody wanted to know if gel finishes are good for exterior applications.
No, not tough enough. Don't build a tough outdoor film. No.
Well, if they have a spar varnish over them, do they work?
Oh, yes, gel stain at the bottom as the first thing that was applied to the wood, coated with 3 or 4 coats of spar varnish. That's a good plan. So I guess I would just wrap up with, I mean, the statement that that's a good plan makes me think of the fact that all of the finishing classes that I do, and whenever I'm talking to somebody about how to help them with a finishing problem, is I'm looking to help provide them with a good plan and good ways to make decisions to find a good plan. Because usually executing the task of finishing, whether it's brushing or wiping, it's not that hard. The hard part is knowing what to do when. And that's the part that I'm glad to help everybody with, especially guild members. So I would think that, with the range of questions coming in, if it would be desirable, maybe in a year or so, we choose a different focus topic and revisit some things, or even just have a more open conversation about finishing. I know that there's a lot of questions out there, and it's kind of what I do is to try and help people figure that out. So I'm glad to do that, and I want to do more of that, and I hope that working with the guild is a good way to do
I'm sure we can arrange something there, Kevin.
that.
I was just now reminded of another question that came in much earlier. One of
Sure.
our members would like to know, what is a conversion varnish?
Yeah. Conversion varnish and or catalyzed lacquer is another thing in the same category. Those are materials that are basically professional factory level materials designed to be sprayed. They are quite tough in a certain way. I would never want to put any of that stuff on a valuable antique. They're super durable for a limited amount of time, and then as a lot of modern technology stuff, they kind of fall apart as time goes by. I mean, they're not chemically sound over time. Super tough for the first 5, 10, maybe more years. After that, certainly not heirloom quality finish. Definitely not. But if you're buying a table and it's advertised as having a conversion varnish on it, that'll be a tough dining room table.
Yeah, it's basically spray epoxy, right?
That's pretty close, actually. That's it's a yes, it's a cross-linking material that is really, really tough, and that's also what leads to its demise. The cross-linking action can, I mean, it makes it brittle in a certain way.
Mhm.
And, this gets to the point of durability of a finish, what's tougher, something that's really hard or something that's more flexible? Well, it's like, how hard do you want the steel on your chisel? Oh, I want it as hard as possible. No, you don't. It would shatter.
Yeah.
Be like carbide. Couldn't even sharpen it. With finishes, how hard do I want it? Well, that's a good question to ask. Automotive finishes are extremely flexible. Good tabletop finishes are extremely flexible. Marine spar varnishes are extremely flexible, which makes them more durable. So using a cross-linking material to make them harder, that's good in a certain way.
Very fine. Well, I see no other questions coming in. Last call for anybody before we let Kevin go. Have a few comments. People think it's been an outstanding presentation, Kevin. I agree with him. Thank you very much for doing that. And I'm absolutely certain the Guild has room to do this again sometime in the future.
Well, I'm planning on staying alive for a while.
So do I.
So I'll probably be here.
Good deal.
And I'm working on the technology for good presentations like this. This is an early step, and I expect them to get better. So I look forward to further interactions.
Well, this system that you and Jay have worked up there works very well. Thank you very much for your efforts. Good quality stuff.
Thanks. It was a big test for us too.
Good. And remember, you can see Kevin at Woodcraft on Saturdays. All you got to do is go over there.
Yep. Call ahead of time. Make sure I didn't get hit by a bus that morning.
All right. Very fine. Well, with that, we're going to conclude this month's edition of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild monthly meeting. Thank you all who attended. By the way, we had 95 at our peak. Good session. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.